Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this Blitz chess postmortem, a postmortem of my Blitz game number 497. Kicked off with e4 and my opponent played the Sicilian defense, c5. I go knight f3, the main move, and he goes d6. So I go for the open Sicilian, which I usually play, and also the most popular way of playing, with the exchange on d4. And now he plays the rare move knight to c6. So the normal move here is knight f6. You can see in the database it's vastly more popular. Immediately attacking the e-pawn and provoking knight to c3 to defend it, and preventing the c-pawn from coming forward. So what you'll see in this game is an example of why black doesn't normally play this move, knight c6, and it's because of c4. Even though the top choice here numerically in the database is knight c3, that's just because it transposes into a main line. But really, c4 is a way to try and prove this knight c6 move is a bit of a mistake. I mean, it's not a huge deal, but should get white a pretty comfortable game. So now this next move, you'll see, is not in the opening book at all. He played e5. Normally they play g6 and knight f6 in some order, so that would be a typical continuation. So e5, bit of a rare line, and not in my opening book at all. And now the knight has a few choices of where to go. The engine is pointing out this move knight c2, which I think, now that I think about it, this is probably a better square for the knight than where I put it on f3. It's a common configuration in the Maroczy bind. It guards some of these dark squares from the c2 square, and it just stays away from trades, and you want to try and keep more pieces when you're playing the Maroczy bind. So that's an interesting way to play. I think I will try that next time. But knight f3 is not a bad move either. He pins the knight. I play bishop e2 unpinning. He plays g6, and this is a second move I have to kind of question. This bishop on g7 is always going to be looking at this dark squared pawn structure. So there's something not consistent about black's play here. You don't want these pawns clogging up the center if you're going to put your bishop on the g7 square. So black should have white should have a good game after this. I castle. He goes queen b6. I play h3 to put the question to the bishop. The best is probably just to trade here. The bishop can't retreat. It'll get trapped on this h5 square by the pawn push g4. So rather than waste another move dropping the bishop back, it's best just to trade it off. But he dropped it back. I played b3 to shore up my center. He plays rook d8. Also a bit of a questionable move. That's looking at this pawn, but this pawn is never really going forward. I've got a really strong bind on it. So knight c3 just developing, and he goes a6. Keeps my knight out of b5. So here I make a decision which is probably a little bit questionable. You can see just by playing normal moves, I've actually built up quite a huge edge in terms of the computer evaluation. Even though the material is even, I've got quite an advantage in space, and I've got a firm grip on the d5 square. So I can play more slowly. I don't have to rush to put things on that square. And so moves like bishop to e3, rook to c1, those kind of moves I can play and just wait and see how black untangles. He hasn't even completed his development. I mean, you could also argue that because he hasn't developed, I should try and break through immediately. But there's no immediate break, which is pretty typical. These Maroczy bind positions are kind of slowish positions, so you rarely have these immediate king-side attacks. So just continuing to build up would be one way to play it. I played knight d5, which, it's not a horrible move, but it allows some simplification. He trades. And now the engine wants me to throw in bishop e3 as an intermediate move, but I just took back. And so my advantage is still there, but it's diminished somewhat. But my opponent, his next move is a mistake. So if you want a tactical quiz here, why don't you do a blunder check on this move, knight b4, and see if you can figure out what's wrong with it. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away. The knight from b4 has no squares. It can't go anywhere. And these are covered by my pieces. That's blocked by his piece. And these squares are covered by my pieces again. So, the knight just has no moves at all. So just a simple move, a3, traps the knight. I didn't play that. But anyway, you should always be on the lookout for things like that. Instead, I played bishop to a3, which I have to agree with the chess engine. It would have been more active on e3, harassing his queen. But plays a5, defending his knight. I keep an edge through all of this. My advantage is pretty strong here. And even after I drop a pawn, it's funny, the engine still thinks that that white has the advantage. I go rook c4. I want to try and trade off his knight as it retreats. Plus, it's a good developing move for the rook, trying to dominate the c file. Gets his rook to b4. There's no other square for the knight to go to, and it needed to get out of trouble. I went queen d2, just looking to trade this guy off. And now he plays a good move here, bishop h6, developing a piece on the king side, taking advantage of the placement of his knight still. And I play queen to c3, keeping pressure on his knight. And now he goes knight f6. If he tries to play knight to a6, it's interesting. I mean, he saves material if he plays this move. And in fact, he stays a pawn up. But the evaluation here is quite strongly in favor of white after a couple of moves, say b4, and say he doesn't want to open things up while the position is while he's undeveloped. He can play a4 to keep it closed, and even here, b5. I guess I'm just kind of driving his pieces back. Why can't he just take that though? Probably because of the discovered attacks with the rook. Bishop takes d6. Oh, I can grab this pawn. Okay, if he takes, then I have this discovered check against this king. Yeah, when you have so many pieces out, there are just going to be tactics all over the board, and particularly black with his cluster pieces on the king side are not really doing a whole lot at the moment. Anyway, he played knight to e7, so getting his pieces out, which the engine actually approves of. And now I pick up a pawn, and I've got my material back. And I'm probably going to win another pawn here and be pretty much in the driver's seat. He pins my rook here. I throw in this check, bishop b5 check. King to f8 is pretty much forced. There was no way to block that check without losing more material. So, he's going to have a real trouble developing his rook. And but I make a mistake the next move. So rook to a1, harassing his queen, would be the best move here. Other moves are possible, but I just dropped my bishop back. I was still not sure how I was going to deal with this this pin here on my rook. It seems like it's a bit awkward. Anyway, this gives him some chances. Let's see, with rook c8 harassing my queen. Yeah, I mean, I have to keep my queen on this diagonal supporting the rook, and it seems like it's just an even game there. He went king g7, and I have still an edge here, but only with this tactic that I missed. So here's another tactical quiz for you. What's so cool about this knight takes e5 tactic? See if you can figure that one out. Because I actually mentioned that during the game, and then I didn't see how it worked. Okay, I'm going to give the answer away. After knight takes e5, he can't really take. If he takes back, let's see, the engine is recommending knight takes d5, but looks like I keep an edge after that. Well, I get a piece. So if he takes back, I take with the queen, and now notice that I've left this rook behind that's hanging. That was one of the things that was worried me, and I'm just attacking a knight, but his king is in check, and I'm also attacking the rook behind it. So if the king goes to f8 to defend the knight, I can take the rook with check, and then get back here to defend my rook. So everything is okay. And if the king goes back to g8 to defend the rook, I can grab the knight, and from this square I'm also defending my rook. So it's just one of those tactics where everything sort of magically works out. hard to calculate those, particularly in a blitz game. Although you might kind of play a move like knight takes e5 on instinct because it just looks pretty appealing here. Anyway, I looked at it briefly and didn't see that it was working. I played rook c4 trying to get out of this awkward pin, and he can just trade queens for an even game. He drops his queen back. I invade with my rook to c7, attacking his knight. I need to gain some tempos to free up my bishop, but he immediately plays b5 to go after my bishop rather than trying to save his knight. I guess his knight didn't have many good squares, and he didn't want to give me the time to save my bishop. But this does give up a pawn. I grab the pawn here and grab the knight, and I'm a little better here, but not so great. He harasses my queen here, and then plays king f6, hitting my rook. And this is another mistake. So there's another cool tactic here. This time you can see it's rook takes e5 rather than knight takes e5. Knight takes e5 wouldn't work because the king is just going to take my rook. But rook takes e5 is possible. So if you want to pause the video and think about it for a second here. It might be an interesting tactic to try and figure out. Okay, first of all, after I take, if he takes back, then that's an immediate checkmate. Notice these two pawns here are guarding these two pawns are guarding the escape squares of the king, so there's a typical mating pattern with the queen and king. Always keep an eye out when you see the king with diagonally placed pieces here blocking his escape routes. That's something that ought to set off tactical alarm bells. Anyway, after rook takes e5, he could also try just moving his king away, saying, okay, I lost a pawn, but maybe I'll survive and play on. And then there's this nice move, rook here, check. So it's a discovered check on the king, blocking all of the king's escape squares. And the only way to block the check is with f6, rook c3, but I just take the rook. So f6, then I can check here, driving the king to the back rank, and wherever it goes, the queen comes in here. And so, I've got this tremendous attack, and not only that, I'm material up. So I have material and the attack. So that's just winning. So very nice tactic there, that rook takes e5. Anyway, my rook was under attack, and I just saved it, and keeping some slight edge, but not what I could have had. Okay, rook b8, and I play g4. And here's where I really start to go downhill. g4 is just a bad idea. Let's see. Knight d4. There's tactics everywhere. Knight to d4. Let's see. If he takes the knight, I'm taking back with check, and there's a skewer to pick up the rook in the corner, I guess, or to harass his king. Amazing, amazing tactics in this position. Yeah, let's look at knight d4. I don't even understand how that's working. New variation here. Check. Oh, it's actually a mate. The king can't go back. He has to go. Oh, he can't go here. He can't go here. Okay, you just got to look at all the squares. The only square the king has is g5, and then I'm mating him. Okay, so another cool tactic. And just all over the board when his king is awkwardly placed and my pieces are active. But, you have to be alert. So instead of playing a cool move or a good move, I play a bad move. I play g4 with the idea of g5 forking his king and his bishop, which, of course, just loses a pawn. Anyway, he takes a pawn over here. I trade. And then I play this tactic which I'd been planning, and of course that loses another pawn. And, I can get the f-pawn here, but he can grab my h-pawn and stay a pawn up. So from a winning position, I've got a position where I have to fight for a draw, but I should be able to hold this draw. So let's go forward. I make a mistake and make it easy for him here. But let's go forward a few moves to get to the next critical point, because it stays drawish for quite a while here. I try harassing his king, and he tries to activate. Yeah, this was kind of a nice moment. When I played rook to d7 here, I thought I was going to win this pawn, but he has this nice sequence where he checks me, and then he takes my rook, so everything is forced, and then he attacks my pawn. So I could take his pawn, but I want to protect my pawn and stop him from having two connected passers, and all that gives him time to defend his pawn. So nice maneuver by black to hold on to his material. And now, but still I should draw this. He pushes his pawns forward, all very logical. Right here, I play the move king g4. If I just drop back with the king to g2, it's still a draw here. There's this tendency to push your king forward. It's more active, and maybe I can check and pick up a pawn here. So there's good reasons to want to push your pawn forward, but you always have to check to make sure your king is not getting into too tight a spot, and that's what's happening here. He has the move rook to f4 check, and sometimes you can even get mated by accident if you overlook this. This time it's not a mate, but it's losing because he picks up another pawn here, and this is now a winning endgame for black. But black gives it up, so I promised to show you some better ways to play this. Let's see. So far, so good. He goes after my pawns, I go after his pawns, and we get a simplified position. Oh, he's in check. He moves his king forward, and I try to queen my pawn. Takes. I push this one forward, steps forward to the king. So all this is good. It's right here when he plays the move h3 check, which the chess engine still recommends as a good move. It just makes it a little more tricky for black to win that endgame when I have these stalemating ideas on h8 with the h-pawn. So what I would do, and what I would recommend, is trying to advance the g-pawn instead of the h-pawn. And here's a way you could try. So he could play the move rook d4 immediately instead of h3 check. He played h3 check and then rook d4. So rook d4, the idea is to round up the pawn. So we get this exchange. I take, he takes. And then I can deliver a check here, drive his king back. Probably king f5 is the most active. I go here. And now, let's see, what should black do here? I think the way to win this is you start with this check to try and drive my king back. If white's king is all the way on the back rank, it becomes a lot easier. And if he comes forward, it's kind of interesting that you have this g4 check. At first you might think it's losing a pawn, but you always got to look out for these tactics. After he takes, you can check and drive the king away from the rook. And if he attacks this rook to maintain the balance, his king is too far away to stop this pawn from queening. You just come forward with the king, or you could even move the pawn forward immediately. Either way, his king is not getting there in time to stop that pawn. So that's a neat little trick there. You can push forward with g4 check right here. The king goes to e3, attacking the rook. Let's see, rook back to d5, sheltering the king from further checks from the side. And now, if this rook drops back to harass the king from behind, you can push the g-pawn forward, and on the check, your king can march in like this to g4 and h3, and that should be straightforward to push those pawns through at that point. So the stiffest resistance is king back to f2 to try and stop these guys. And now you can push the g-pawn immediately. So once again, whenever you can push that g-pawn, try and get it in. King goes in front, you can check and drive it all the way to the back rank. If the king goes here, it's checkmate. If it goes here, you can check on f2 and drive the king away from the pawns, and that will also be good. So king back to g1, say, and now h3, threatening checkmate. So you have this rook here ready to deliver mate. The rook has to drop back to defend against the checkmate. And now, let's see, you can bring the rook in a little bit closer. The rook is good on the e-file here, and start to bring your king in. So if he delivers some checks from the side, you can step like this all the way forward, and then one more check here. You can block, and then the rook has to drop to the back rank. And now you need some little trick here to finish this off. Let's see. Does g2 work? Yeah, you always have to worry about, is the king going to get stalemated here on h2, but looks like this works now. Your king goes all the way to f2. This king is short on squares, but if the check comes from the side, then you can block this way, and the exchange will, well, when the rook is out of the way, then the king is free to take the h-pawn, so there's no stalemate here. So the rook drops back to here. You can put the rook all the way to the this rank, and then one more check. King goes here. White can harass you for a long time, but this is finally ending. You're getting your queen, and it should be an easy win from that point. So anyway, I just wanted to show you guys how you can win that endgame. It's funny how difficult it can be. You do have to be careful and watch out for all those little tricks. So let's go back to the game. He played h3 check, and I think this is still winning, but it's just making his job more difficult. Let's see, I played king g1. He goes rook to d4. We get this trade of pawns. Rook takes, and now I deliver the check. So very similar to those other lines, but with the difference that it's the h-pawn that's forward and not the g-pawn. Rook to a4 to get the maximum checking distance against his king. Rook to d1 check. Drives me to the second rank here. King to... Okay, now he brings the g-pawn forward. And now it looks like I could actually just, with rook f4 check, stalemate. There's already a stalemate trick. That's kind of cool. Rook f4 check, and he takes, and my king has no moves because his king is blocking that square, and his rook has gotten all of my other squares cut off. Yeah, kind of amazing, these little stalemate tricks all over the place. I missed that one. Let's see. Rook a3 check, king f4, rook a4 check. King g5. I was just harassing his king, chasing it around. Cancel that. Let's see. Oh, I came forward with my king, just trying to cause a maximum amount of difficulty. He checks me back and then brings his king forward. But now this h-pawn is pinned, so still causing some problems. He can still win this, but anyway, it's my move. I go rook b4, staying with the pin. Check. King g1. Rook g2, check. Okay, drives me to the corner. Then goes to f2. And maybe with the idea of bringing his pawns forward, I go back to g1. And now h2 check. And after h2 check, that's the final mistake. It's just completely drawn at this point. My king only has one move to go in the corner, and now it's in stalemate here. I just need to get rid of the rook. So let's see. The engine is suggesting rook. It's his turn. He could play rook f1 check. He played king h3. I go rook b3 check. He blocks. I trade off the rook, and I get the stalemate. So that's how the game ended. Anyway, I thought that was a pretty interesting game. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave any comments you have in the section below, and I will see you again soon. Bye.